Good afternoon, everybody, and thanks for tuning in. John Kelly Profiler here. Welcome. And today we're going to be doing a special. We're going to be focusing on Zodiac. It's been 5 years since we put out our profile on Zodiac, and we're going to go over it because we think a couple things may have changed and we may want to refresh the profile. So buckle up. Here we go. And this might be a little bit longer, but stick with us. I think you'll find some very interesting things on Zodiac. I think we had some pretty good hits here. All righty. Leah, you have
Oh,
questions for me. How are you today?
good. Thanks for having me on again, Sean.
Oh, yeah. Hey, without you, it doesn't go on. Go ahead.
Oh, all right. So, yeah, I do have some questions for you today. So, getting started here, we have that Netflix show out. What is it? This is the Zodiac speaking. And they talk about Arthur Lee Allen in there. What are your thoughts on that show? Can you talk about that a bit more?
Yeah, I think it's very interesting, very interesting docu-series. I would suggest people check it out if they have any interest in Zodiac or serial killers at all. I found it to be very interesting, and it kind of jogged my memory on a couple different things. When I look at Alan, I start to think about him as a pedophile, but then I also realize that there have been other serial killers who also took advantage of underage kids and killed underage kids. Okay, not only were they uh, interested in them sexually, but they killed them as well. And I consider them pedophiles and serial killers. So it's something that's a little off, something we're not used to, but it's something that's very interesting, and I think it needs to be explored.
Hmm. Right. So, I know there's some info out there, John, talking about Zodiac, maybe being an incel. What are your thoughts on that as well?
Well, I've thought about that considerably over the years because, he seemed to be extremely more violent and much harsher in murdering the couples with the female. He focused more, to me, it seemed, on hurting and killing the female than he did on the male. Now, I'm not saying that's written in stone, but that's just an observation I've had and other people have had too. And I'm thinking to myself, where is this hatred, this added hatred towards women coming from? Am I right, wrong, or indifferent there? But the one thing I do not want to dilute in any way or negate in any way is what I feel is the jealous rage that he has against couples because he can't have a serious relationship with a woman. Okay, and and that's why he has this jealous volcanic rage for couples and why he takes it out on couples. So when I look at Zodiac, I think the igniter of his rage and uh, the reason he was so rageful against couples and why he focused on couples is because he was not able to have a relationship, a meaningful relationship with a mature and older woman. And, I think that was his primary objective for attacking couples. He wanted to punish them because he couldn't have a relationship. Well, you ask yourself, well, why couldn't he have a relationship? Certainly, I think because of his narcissism, and I mean he just permeates of narcissism. I mean, it's not about him. Certainly, it's about the woman, right? So he believes the reason he can't have a meaningful relationship is because women don't think he's the best thing since sliced bread, right? Which he believes he is. He feels I'm sure in his mind, feels he's a walking Don Juan He can't understand why women aren't flaunting all over him. So when he attacks the couple, he does more physical damage to the female than he does to the male. Now, right, wrong, or indifferent, this point in time in history, that's where I'm at with this.
Um, so what do you think about the Zodiac's need for fame? So he's sending out all these letters, trying to make a big name for himself. What do you think about his need for fame?
I think he's kind of walking around really being feeling like a nobody with a lot of rage. And again, I believe the rage was focused on him not being able to have a relationship, but other people having and enjoying relationships, and he felt left out. And it's again jealous rage is where I'm coming from on this, which became explosive volcanic rage when he would show up, to kill them, right? So I think that after the first attack, and he killed that young man and that young woman. I think it was Lake Harmon Road, was it? Something like that.
Mhm.
What and when he killed them, the bottom line is that he became famous because that got written up in all the papers, was all over the news, and he saw himself on the news. I really believe he's a very visually oriented person. So he saw himself in the papers, on the news. All of a sudden, he feels he's a somebody, you know. Sadly, he's a somebody because he's a cold blooded killer of two young kids, right? So, but he don't care. Hey, since you've been doing this, that serial killers really don't have very much or no remorse or feel guilt. I mean, really, their empathy's down in the gutter somewhere. So the bottom line is now he's famous for murdering. So this is when he starts to want more fame. Fame can be very addicting, can be very addicting. And, I start to wonder, recently, I started to wonder, is it just that, or were you famous for something else at one time when you were younger, but that faded away? You got a taste of it, but you lost it. It faded away. And now you're more infamous and you're famous for, these murderous deeds. So I'm kind of kicking this around, especially with Arthur Lee Allen. When we look at him, because at one point in his life, and this wasn't talked about enough as far as I'm concerned, that's why I dove into it. Um, he was an excellent, unbelievable diver, and it wasn't brought out how great he was as a diver. But when he was a young man, I mean, he was like tops in his county. I think maybe tops in the state.
Yeah.
Um, he won some medals. I mean, so he enjoyed fame early on, but then it seems that fame dissipated and left him. And not saying he's the killer, that he's Zodiac. He's certainly a person of interest in the Zodiac murders. I don't think he's ever been eliminated or cleared. Maybe he has. If he has, I'm sorry. But bottom line is, he is a person of interest. And he had fame earlier in life, dissipated. I think he went off to the Navy. That's something else. He went into a submarine. That's not easy to do. That's a certain kind of person who goes to submarine service. Then he comes out, and pretty much all that fame has been washed away, if you will. And Again, not saying he is the Zodiac, but he is certainly a person of interest here. And sometimes when you get a taste of fame, then you lose it. You want it back pretty badly too. But nevertheless, bringing it all together, Zodiac really was addicted to fame to the point of writing letters, calling, taunting police, killing taxi cab drivers to get his name in the papers.
Mhm.
Calling people up on the phone and lawyers. He just couldn't get enough, right? And then all of a sudden, he stopped.
Mhm. He did
But go
start.
ahead, go ahead.
Yeah. So, John, I do have a question on that as well. His letters, I know he made some requests, right, to the press, print this cipher on your front page, or else I'm going to, start going on a killing spree again. What does that say about him? I'm just curious on what your thoughts on that.
What it is not just a killing spree. He didn't threaten the press or the public with a killing spree. He threatened them with killing busloads of kids
Mm-hmm.
at a time. And I think he started talking about shooting them up as they come off the bus, or he talked about bombs and blowing young kids up, coming from school or whatever. And that also jumped out at me a bit too, because Arthur Lee Allen was a school teacher. So he'd understand kids, he'd understand parents, and he'd understand the fear parents would have if something was going to happen to their children or whatever. So I'm kind of just kicking all this around. Again, he's a person of interest that I'm very interested in, obviously, and I'm
Yeah. All
digging
right.
away at him, right?
Mhm. All right. So going on here, why do you think the Zodiac stopped killing? What
Well,
caused it?
one other point before we go there
Yeah.
is, the reason the newspapers, because that was your question too, was why they published it when he threatened to hurt the kids, right, or kill the kids, right?
Yeah. And what do you think he got?
Well, go ahead.
Yeah. What do you think he got out of that they actually published it then?
Well, he got fame out of it. That's what he's addicted to, and he got a lot of fame out of it. He got a quick high, a great feeling out of it. And the reason, that they published it is because, it's pretty much why the New York Times and the Post published the Unabomber's Manifesto, if I'm correct, because he threatened to blow an airplane up. And, I'm sure these newspapers didn't want to be blamed for a busload of kids being shot or blown up. So what do they got to lose? Look at Here's this guy's threat. They're bringing it out. They're alerting the public, and they've talked to law enforcement about it. I'm sure on all ends. So it's all to the upside to publish it, and there's no risk to the downside not to publish it, except
Yeah.
that once you publish something from one of these guys, you're definitely going to hear from them again. But so what? He is in the news, and news sells. So,
True. So, all right. If we're good on that point, then I do. Yeah, I wanted to ask you, why do you think he stopped killing? What made the Zodiac stop?
well, in the profile, I talk about him being a very visual person, right? Well, he was seen, okay? And after he killed Mr. Stein, the cab driver, he was seen. And he was seen by two cops that stopped him, he claims, on the street and questioned him about the murder down the road or the shooting down the road. And, he threw them into left field. He threw them a fluke and said, Yeah, I just saw somebody run down the road. They said, thank you very much. And they went flying down the road to see if they could get the non-existent person that he just threw them. He threw them some bait, right?
Yeah.
But he got them away from him. Very smart, very fast thinker on his feet. But they saw him, those cops saw him. All right. He's also seen by some kids there, supposedly, after he was leaving the taxi cab after killing Mr. Stein. So I think, again, because he's extremely visual and because he was seen, I think that struck a lot of fear in him because he really was not seen by anybody that survived. I think we had one person that survived, um, and then we had another person that survived for a while, and then she died, who kind of said, he matched a certain sketch, right? I mean, they felt there was a sketch that, or there was talk of a sketch um, at Lake Barissa, and um, of the man that was seen by other people at Lake Barissa. So, I mean, I think that that was enough for him because these guys do not want to get caught. They do not want to get caught. So that may have been enough to sway him. But I have secondary thoughts on that too because he could have ended up in jail. Could be could have died. He could have ended up as uh, again Arthur Lee Allen came out where he was um, in a psych unit uh, in Tescadero, I believe, for 3 4 years. So that could have again, he's only a person of interest. I mean, again, if he was a Zodiac, I mean that would answer it completely.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but usually these guys don't stop. But again, very visual guys with visual primary intake since visual serial killers usually are very concerned about being seen. And one of the other cases we worked, the I-70 killer, you know, um, he left his last victim alive. He thought she was dead, but she was really alive. And she got a really good look at him, thus the great sketch that's out there on him. That's been done in many different ways, and even with age progression, it's been put out there. And we didn't seem to hear from him after that, or else he changed his MO completely. You may not hear from them, or they may change the MO. I mean, it's a toss up, but I'm pretty sure um, he and Zodiac were concerned about being seen, and of course, once you're seen, you can be identified, and that can put you back back in the day. That can put you in jail for life or on a gurney to be executed.
Right. Yeah. All right. Very good points there, John. I like it. All right. So I wanna pick your brain about the profile that you did a couple years ago here. Let me pull that out for us.
5 years ago, almost 5 years ago,
Yeah.
time flies.
I can't believe it. Already 2025 here. All right. So I'm just gonna read through the points here, John. I'll stop and ask you every so often what you think about something, but feel free to interrupt me here. So your zodiac partial profile, you had him as a white male, 25 to 35 years old, and he was known to be a loner. What do you think about him being a loner, John? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I believe he was a loner. I mean, these guys are usually kind of have their weird ways about them. They're not social, kind of butterflies. They have a hard time keeping relationships, male or female. So a lot of them end up being loners. And plus, they want to do their thing. And then it's not like they're going to have a whole lot of company doing what they want to do and, enjoying their pastime, right? So he was a loner. The 25 to 35 back then, that's from the FBI, pretty much on serial killers that they would start to offend within those 10 years, between 25 and 35. That was the time we used to gauge their starting point back then. Today, it's changed. They're starting earlier. Probably today, we're talking about 22 to maybe 32. In that area there, in that range. Definitely younger than older, though. I'll say that. Um, did you have another question that was in there?
Nope, just those two there. So, all right. Um, so you next have he was known to be obsessive compulsive, a place for everything and everything in its place. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, as far as I was concerned, Zodiac didn't drop the ball much. He didn't make too many mistakes. Okay. I mean, somebody that is that disciplined and somebody that is that organized usually doesn't miss a beat. And usually there's a place for everything and everything in its place. That is their mantra. That is the structure they follow. Okay. And you can see that. And it could be obsessive compulsive with that. I mean, I wouldn't doubt that at all. But pretty much to this point, he's gotten away with the perfect crimes, not just crimes. He got away with the perfect murders, supposedly. To this point, he's been perfect.
I'm very lucky too. All right. Next one we have is primary intake sense, visual.
Yeah, we've done a lot of work on primary intake senses with serial killers, and the vast majority are visual. Some are auditory, and they're really good talkers, like Ted Bundy's a really good talking guy. I would say that was his primary intake sense. He was going off to become an attorney. He could talk. I mean, he was even on the health line, talking all the time on the helpline, trying to talk people out of committing suicide when he was next to Ann Rural, who was working for law enforcement at the time, trying to help people on the helpline. That was her best book, Stranger Beside Me. That's how she met him. He used to make sure he'd walk her to her car to make sure she'd feel safe and she was safe and nobody'd hurt her. I mean, real gentleman kind of guy, but he could really talk it up. So he was a kind of an auditory, charming kind of guy where I would say his primary intake sense was auditory. And that's interesting too, and because I believe he had a stutter when he was younger, and he overcame it and really aced it as far as language went. And that's why he was. That's why he was involved with politicians too. You have to be a good auditory communicator if you're going to be a politician. And then also, going off again to be a lawyer, you better know how to talk if you're going to be a lawyer. You got to argue cases. So yeah, he was Ted Bundy was auditory, but I believe that our guy here was visual. He had a visual primary intake sense. Most do. Some are auditory. None are kinesthetic or feelings oriented. Those are the three primary intake senses. Just so our audience knows, there's visual, there's auditory, and there's kinesthetic. Serial killers do not have a kinesthetic intake sense. They do not feel any empathy, guilt, or remorse. They don't have any feelings for others, usually. Maybe in their family, child, or something like that, one of the kids, maybe their wife a little bit or something, I don't know. But bottom line is, uh, most serial killers are visual, and you could tell when you look at Zodiac how visual he is. He puts the big hood over. but he has the markings you can see on the hood. Okay. I mean, you can see the letters he's written, the ciphers he's written, all these codes, you know, that is a visual kind of person. That is not an auditory kind of person. That is a person who probably would excel more in math or the sciences or something like that, accounting even. I mean, that, if he was a white collar kind of person, blue collar, you'd be looking at somebody that could really connect the dots, like a really super good hands-on kind of contract or something. I mean, there's millions of jobs for white collar and blue collar, but what I'm trying to make is you're looking at, someone here in the Zodiac that is very, very visually focused. Okay, always the letters to the press, sending, part of Mr. Stein's bloody shirt so they could see it. They could see the blood on the shirt so they could match it up so they know it was him. Couldn't get enough of himself in the newspapers, seeing himself in the newspapers in those days. Don't forget, in those days, you didn't have cable TV or all these channels or anything else. So, although he probably did enjoy seeing himself on what channels there were and probably couldn't get enough of it. Um, and that's the other thing too that kind of brings me back for a person of interest, Mr. Allen, because he did have clippings, I think, of all the Zodiac murders, or a good portion of the Zodiac murders at all. And I've known other serial killers who've kept news clippings as souvenirs or trophies, if you will, of their exploits. So it's all interesting to me. I think we just this the whole Zodiac thing is a work in progress, and I'm just hoping somewhere along the line somebody can come up with some good DNA or a good DNA profile that could possibly definitely identify Zodiac. Unfortunately, what we have going on here is time. Time is going by, and as time goes by, we get older, but also the DNA gets older. So,
Right. I mean, it's what, over 50 years ago now, right? Those murders happened, so
yeah.
it's not helping. Okay, next one you have here. Functioning, extremely structured with sophistication. I'm not sure where you're going with that one, John. What's that mean there?
Well, being structured is a place for everything and everything in its place kind of thing.
Mhm.
It's very, very structured, very meticulous. Like I said earlier, probably obsessive compulsive about dotting the I's and crossing the T's. I mean, at Lake Berryessa, he shows up, he's got a hood on and he's got a gun, he's got a knife, he comes down, he ties these two kids up and he stabs them. How does he know somebody's going to show up or see him there? I mean, that's what's amazing to me. Is that luck? Is that just luck? Or, is that really scoping out the area out well? You know what I mean? I mean, it's now, how do you become that good? I mean, how do you get that good unless you are so familiar with that area and you scope it out and you can keep an eye out in both directions or whatever? I mean, you really have to know the area. So that means you've had to spend a lot of time in that area. What were you doing in that area? What were you doing in that area? And again, it brings me back kind of to, not kind of, it does bring me back to the person of interest, you know, uh, Arthur Lee Allen, because he was into scuba diving and everything, and he was familiar with Lake Berryessa. So I mean, and he does match kind of the size of Zodiac. I mean, they're very similar. Um, but that's why he's such a good person of interest.
Mhm.
All these years, keeps coming back. I mean, you how do you eliminate him? I don't know. Go ahead. I know you have other questions.
Yeah, no, you're good. I'm just going to keep working my way through. So, Next one here, he probably had military training and was familiar with law enforcement techniques. Why did
You
you
know,
say that?
I'm not sure about familiar with law enforcement techniques, but I do believe military training. I do believe that he knew a little bit about camouflaging himself and hiding himself and blending in, and this whole ciphering code kind of stuff that he was doing, and the ciphers he put out there. I mean, I really, think he learned that somewhere. I think he learned that somewhere. Um, where I didn't look into yet, I'm going to look into submarine training and specialties because he
Mm-hmm.
spent a lot of time in submarines
Yeah.
in the Navy, and that's unusual to me. Not a whole lot of people do that. There's not that many people that go into the Navy that end up in submarines, especially back then in the day. I mean, quite risky if to put it mildly.
Mm-hmm.
Back then, to be in a submarine, but I guess obviously this guy was up for it. And when you think about him, he was up for risk. Uh, I think he liked race cars,
Yeah.
and I mean, he definitely in the diving and everything that he was involved in.
Yeah.
Um, as a younger man, I mean, that was stimulating, and there was certainly bit of a risk tied to that. But the racing and the race cars and everything, and submarines, uh,
It's like his adrenaline's pumping.
the adrenaline's flying, and then the other thing that came out in that documentary that was pretty upsetting was risking with different knockout formulas. I mean, didn't he say, or somebody said, yeah, somebody else said it was an allegation that he admitted to drugging the kids or something, knocking them out.
Yeah, I think there was the allegation he confessed to knocking out those kids when they were on a trip with him. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, I think he enjoyed risky behavior. He enjoyed risky behavior. There's no question about it. What was his risk level, his risk tolerance, I don't know. But there was some risk in his life.
Yeah.
I mean, he enjoyed the stimulation,
Yeah.
to a certain point.
And then you look at the murders and how risky they are.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, there were, like I said, like Lake Berryessa or wherever he was, and you know, in some of the places he was, maybe it was lower risk. It was at night in the woods, Lover's Lane, whatever. But still, shots fired. Lake Berryessa taking the time to abduct, to get out the restraints, tie the people up, stab them to death.
Yeah.
You know, uh, you know,
The taxi cab murder too.
the taxi cab murder. That was a shooting, close range. And then we have the shootings too at the Springs, right? I think it was that Blue Rock Springs or Rock Springs or something.
Yeah. What was that called
Yeah.
again?
So all that is risky behavior.
Very much.
Who's going to show up? Who's going to hear the shots? Who's how do you know, there's not somebody closer or somebody more present? I mean, this guy really, did his job by scoping out areas sometimes.
Yep, for sure. All right, so I'm going to keep going through the profile here. So Forgive me if we read this already. So we had experience with weapons and a flashlight. Then we have the first primary motivator, jealous rage.
Yeah, I mean, even though we did this 5 years ago, my primary motivator has not changed. Uh, I still believe it was jealous rage. How can these people have a relationship and I can? I'm really angry over that. I'm enraged over that. And it's really jealousy. Um, I believe same thing with Son of Sam. Son of Sam shooting, couples and that were parked alongside the roads, the streets in New York City, right? I mean, you know, you ask yourself, why would somebody, you know, especially a serial focus on couples? What enrages him or makes him so angry about couples being together, enjoying each other and being emotional? Well, probably because he can't have that, right? So it enrages him. My 2 cents.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. So we have your second primary motivator is fame, which you did talk about. Got that one.
Yeah, yeah. This guy really, really can't get enough of himself. He
Yeah.
really, really couldn't get enough of himself until something happened. And I really think, it was after he was seen that, you know, I don't recall him being seen again or acting out again after that, after uh, the Stein killing, although, he did send letters and, uh, kind of disrespect law enforcement and everything else with that. But,
Mhm.
through his letters and stuff. But, it doesn't seem like he acted out. He leads you to believe he acted out after, but we have no proof of that. Only his word. And, I feel about serial killers, words, if their lips are moving, they're lying.
Yeah.
That's just the way I look at it. I
Hmm.
don't I don't give a lot of credence to it at all. They tell me, oh, this, that, everything else. I
Yeah.
would have never done. Yeah, sure, save it.
All right. So we talked this a little bit. He is extremely familiar with the areas he's killed in. And we also have he's a hunter and probably a fisherman.
Yeah, I mean, they go together lots of times, fishing and hunting, and certainly in the areas where some of the people were found dead. Um, so I believe that these guys focus on killing, uh, other animals, and it helps them become desensitized, and they can move up to killing humans, bigger animals, if you will.
Mhm.
Um, I really believe that, and we do know he did kill animals. I don't know how he killed them. Again, he's a person of interest, but uh, you know, uh, Richard Lee Allen we know he killed animals, but it didn't say how he killed animals, right?
No, I don't remember him saying that. I remember they found a bunch of animal parts in his fridge. And then he was pulled over that one night with a knife. Remember that? And I think he said he killed a chicken or something.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. He just killed. He had blood on the.
Yeah. So I don't know. That's all I remember them saying though.
Yeah, I think that was closer to Lake Berryessa too, right?
I thought I'd have to go back and watch it again, but I thought they said it was that night or something too. Or
Really good documentary.
yeah,
Really good documentary.
very good.
But still doesn't prove he killed anybody. I mean, he can't be eliminated or cleared, but can't be indicted either.
Yep. Yeah, it's like he can't be cleared. What could clear him, John? What would they?
They would have to put him in other places when the murders were taking place. And that bothers me that they haven't been able to come out and say that they could do that, that he was somewhere else. Okay, why can't they come out and say he was somewhere else on all these different occasions?
Mhm.
Why can't they just say, oh, it wasn't him, he was over here at that time, we have proof?
Right.
Maybe they can, but they're not saying it. But the first thing you would do, a good detective would do, it'd be to go out and try to eliminate a person of interest by doing that.
Hmm.
So why can't they?
Yeah. Mm.
I mean, that's the easiest thing to do. He couldn't have done it because he wasn't there.
No alibi or anything that we know of.
I don't.
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't seen anything on their attempts to eliminate him.
No.
They couldn't find fingerprints or whatever, and DNA was like not even thought of back in those days. But I mean, they couldn't find anything in his house. They went through his house, um, and searched the hell out of it. Couldn't tie him to anything. But that doesn't surprise me either with the amount of time he had to do whatever he wanted to do. And again, if he's obsessive compulsive, which I believe he is, plays for everything and everything in his place. They have plenty of time to clean up and everything.
Mhm.
I mean, somebody that's obsessive about dotting the i's and crossing the t's. They're going to make it hard. You're going to, especially in those days without DNA, you're going to have a hell of a time.
Oh yeah.
Trying to if they're really good at cleaning up, you're going to have a hard time.
Mhm.
If they have weapons that they use, they'll get rid of them. If they have clothes with blood on, they'll get rid of them. They'll wear gloves. I mean, it was without the DNA and the monitoring of phones, cell phones, and stuff, and everything.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a lot easier back then to get away with stuff, unfortunately. So, okay, gonna keep going here. We got a couple more lines to get through. So, he was known by others for his ciphering and probably bragged about it before his murder spree.
Well, he was known for ciphering. We saw that come out in the documentary recently,
Yeah.
but I don't know how much bragging he would do, but I believe he would brag or he would show off a little, um, wherever that might be.
Mhm.
Again, these guys really aren't good company, so they don't have a lot of friends that hang out. And
Yeah.
they end up being loners because they want to go do their thing, and they know that they don't need a witness, uh, to hang out with them, and they're not going to be talking the murders he's committed and gotten away with it. I mean, or talk about how to kidnap people or whatever. I mean, it's or abduct people or I could see the Zodiac maybe talking about the signs of the Zodiac and various astrological things or and having those written somewhere. I would feel that he doesn't believe there's any harm in that. But I think this is much before he decided to become the Zodiac. It just led into his fantasy. This would be before the killings. So he might be known, by just somebody running around portraying, showing astrological signs. Because I think he was definitely into that in some way, and that just encouraged the fantasy, enhanced his fantasy into killing and supposedly taking slaves that he'd have later on. People
Hmm.
that he killed would become his slaves later after he was deceased and
Yeah.
passed over. I mean, so I think that those are the only clues I think that could have predated the murders and might give us an inkling on who the guy is.
Yeah, I see. All right, I like that. So if he didn't die or end up in jail, he could have stopped killing because he met a significant other that met his emotional needs.
Yeah,
Who met?
I can't rule that out. I can't
Yeah,
rule that out. That because that's what his thing was. He was extremely jealous about people that could have meaningful relationships and loving relationships, and that's why he was killing him. I believe that was at you know the tip of his rage. So did he find Miss Wright
mm-hmm.
somewhere? And for whatever reason, she decided to, pick up with him, and he picked up with her, and they went off and had a relationship together. We can't say no. We can't say it didn't happen. Can't say he never got married. Can't say that that was more important to him when he did have him, if he did ever find a significant relationship. That was, more important than him running around the woods and murdering kids at night or something. I
Right.
mean, maybe it was his dream come true or whatever. Pretty crazy, but it happens. There's
Mm-hmm.
like they say, there's somebody's always meant for someone. There's always somebody out there, and so you just don't know. You just don't know. I mean,
Yeah,
it's really a mystery.
mm-hmm. That's right. So, okay, again, he could have gotten married and may have had kids and grandchildren. Um, when he worked, it was most likely in a visually structured, hands on job. Um, Next one we got, he has been seen and was known at Lake Berryessa over the years before the murders. Tell me about
Yeah,
that.
yeah, I would say that. I said that 5 years ago, and it's funny. It comes out in this documentary
Yeah.
that Arthur Lee Allen was known to be at Lake Berryessa by other people. So um, it is interesting. And what was the other part of that? That over the years,
Um, Over the years before the murders. So he has been seen and was known at Lake Berryessa over the years before the murders. So,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, and had to be because he had to spend time there. And it's not like you can spend, I think, a lot of time there and not be ever seen.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just common sense to me to think because it had to be scoped out well for him to take that kind of risk, try and abduct and tie up two people, and then go about murdering them the way he did, and then also go out and paint on the car, right on the car. I mean, he had to be extremely familiar with that area. That means he had to put time into that area, and he had to go there on multiple occasions. So that leads me to believe that somebody would have seen him. Somebody.
Yeah. Makes sense. Okay. Last line we got here on the profile. Geographically, he probably lived in an area that was in the middle of the first three attacks.
Yeah, I would say that he didn't have to travel too far because he was very familiar with all the areas.
Mhm.
I don't know. I To be honest with you, I didn't look up where Arthur Lee Allen lived either, so I have no idea.
Yeah.
Maybe he didn't live anywhere near there. I have
Yeah.
no idea. But I just think, 5 years ago when we did that profile, that Zodiac was probably somewhere in the middle of those three areas.
Makes sense.
Because he seemed very, very familiar, and he knew the areas very, very well.
Yeah.
So they're probably close by.
Makes a lot of sense. We know Arthur Lee Allen liked driving, like cars and stuff. So I don't know.
Mhm.
Have that. All right. So that's all I had on the profile there, John. Um, you did a good job. I think you guys did great on that one.
Thank you, thank you. Yeah, yeah. And now you brought up about the cars. Yeah, he liked the speed too, right?
Yeah.
In the documentary they talked about, and then he was in with race car drivers and stuff. So he was looking for that stimulation. You know, doesn't mean he's Zodiac.
Mhm.
Doesn't mean he's Zodiac. I mean, we've had other cases where we've had people that we couldn't eliminate, and they never killed anybody. They weren't the killer, but you just couldn't, for whatever reason, eliminate.
Yeah.
Going to pop up at certain places where they shouldn't have been,
Yeah.
but they didn't kill anybody. You know, and that happened definitely in Green River. There's no question about it. Um, so anyway, that's what we have for today. So I will say goodbye to you. And thank
Thank
you
you.
so much. You did a great job, great questions. And to our audience out there, thank you so much for tuning in. Hope you got something out of this. I know it's pretty long-winded, but this is a pretty interesting topic for me. And if you like us, please like us. If you want to subscribe, please subscribe. If you like this kind of thing, and every now and then we do a deep dive into uh, older cases, newer cases, anything we find interesting. Most importantly, take care of yourselves. We live in a very violent world. Stay on your toes. And until next time, God bless and take care.